I'm Emily Cook, Product Manager for Keys and Key Accessories for the Hillman Group. I am putting these videos together for your easy reference both pre- and post-training with the Speed 44 key cutting machine. Any questions you have or helpful tips and tricks you might need to know should be covered by these videos. If you don't find your answers here, you can always refer back to the Speed 44 operating manual. Safety first. Safety begins with education and continues with proper application. Always adhere to the following safety guidelines when using the Speed 44 or any other key cutting machine. Number 1. Use the safety shield. Always wear safety glasses or other protective eyewear in conjunction with the safety shield to prevent injury from metal shavings. Number 2. Keep work area clean. Cluttered tables and work areas invite injuries to occur. Make sure there are at least 12 inches of clearance on all sides of the Speed 44 to ensure proper ventilation. Lack of ventilation can cause the machine to overheat, which will cause the power to automatically shut off. It's during this automatic power shutoff that an injury can occur. Number 3. Servicing the Speed 44. Always turn the cutter off before making adjustments or when inserting or removing key blades. Also, make sure to unplug the Speed 44 prior to performing any maintenance, such as calibrating the tracer or replacing the cutter. Number 4. Keep children away. All customers, especially children, should be kept away from the work area. Do not let customers touch or operate the key machine. Number 5. Stay alert. Pay attention and watch what you are doing. Use common sense and operate the machine carefully. Keep long hair and loose clothing away from the cutter, brush, and other moving parts. Number 6. Electrical safety. The machine is designed to operate using a 120-volt AC outlet. It is supplied with a 3-prong grounded plug only. Do not defeat the safety purpose of the plug by modifying or using with non-grounded outlets. Repair or replace damaged or worn power cords immediately. To reduce the risk of fire or electrical shock, do not expose or operate the machine in wet or damp locations. Number 7. Key cutting only. The machine was specially designed to cut keys only. No metal or any other objects should be cut. Not only will this ruin the cutting blade, it could cause injuries. Following these guidelines will help to reduce or eliminate any accidental injury from occurring during routine use and maintenance. First, let's get acquainted with the Speed 44 and the different parts of the machine that we'll be using. Off to the right, we have our main power plug, as well as the power port that houses the fuses. We have our main power on-off switch, which when switched on, the Speed 44 is equipped with a warning light to let you know when the machine is receiving power. And off to the left, we have our motor on-off switch, which turns on both the cutter and the deburring brush. We have our tracer, cutter, and deburring brush located under the safety cover and safety shield. We have our carriage stop here that prevents the carriage from running into the cutter or the tracer. We have our lateral carriage lever that moves the carriage left and right. And then we have the carriage itself, which if you push down on the carriage handle, push in the red button and bring it forward, will allow the keys, will then bring the keys up to the tracer and the cutter to then cut the keys. On the carriage, we have our jaws that hold the keys, A, B, C, and D clamps that hold different styles of keys depending on how they're cut, as well as the jaw knobs that lock those keys down into place. In the front, we have our shoulder guide that helps us determine that the keys are equidistant apart. The items on the bottom here are included with the Speed 44 machine, and the items on top are not included, but they are tools that you will need to do various functions, such as gauging keys or performing maintenance. The machine does come with a 19mm wrench, a locking rod, a 3mm Allen key, and a 2.5mm Allen key, 2 replacement fuses, 2 adjusting keys, 2 steel bars, 2 1.2mm steel pins, and 2 1.7mm steel pins. The last objects here are used for varying types of keys to fit into the jaws. Now the items on top that don't come with it that you will need a socket wrench with a 10mm socket in order to loosen the bolts on the bottom of the machine to adjust the motor. You will also need a 4mm Allen key and a 5mm Allen key. You will need the original customer's key that you're going to duplicate, as well as a blank key. You will need a screwdriver, either Phillips or a flathead. You will need a chip brush, even though the Speed 44 does come with a tray to catch up the metal shavings. It doesn't catch all of them, so you will need the chip brush to help clean up your work area and make sure that the jaws remain metal shaving free. And you'll also need a pair of safety glasses to be used in conjunction with the safety shield to help avoid any metal shavings from getting in your eyes. In this video, we're going to show you how to replace our tracer point. Tools that you will need will be the 3mm Allen key that was provided with the machine, as well as a 5mm Allen key. So always make sure that the machine is unplugged, prevent any injuries or accidents. And then we're going to use our 5mm Allen key, and we are going to loosen this bolt in the back. After we have that loose, we're going to use our 3mm Allen key to undo the grub nut, as the manual calls it, on top here. And once we have that loosened, this allows the tracer point to move side to side. We're going to keep using our 5mm Allen key to hold it in place while we simply unscrew the tracer tool. Once that is loose, you can then take it out. You can see the threading in the hollow shaft that actually screws onto that bolt in the back. And then you can use your new tracer tool, put it in, and begin to screw clockwise to lock it back into place. Alright. Now that we have that locked down, we want the tracer tool to be straight up and down with the flat edge facing out towards the lever handle here. And then we're going to lock down that grub nut on top with our 3mm Allen key. And that is what prevents our tracer tool from twisting side to side. And now we're going to finish tightening the rear. And that is how you replace the tracer point. Now, anytime you replace a tracer point, you will have to calibrate the tracer point and the cutting tool together, which we will show in another video. In this video, we're going to show you how to calibrate the cutting tool along with the tracer tip. Since we have replaced a tracer tip, it will definitely need to be calibrated. The tools that you will need are your 3mm Allen key, as well as your 2 adjustment keys that were provided with the Speed 44. Now we are going to need to put these into the A-clamp. That square shoulder there will fit onto there squarely. Now, as always with any other keys, we need to make sure that we have these level, and they are. Next, we are going to raise the clamp carriage up to the cutting tool and the tracer point, which we can see that the tracer point is not touching the key where the cutter is. So in order to adjust that, we're going to use our 3mm Allen key, and we are going to loosen the grub nut on top. And we don't need to loosen it much, just a little to allow it to move. And then we're going to use this point back here, which is connected to the spring inside the nut, that will allow us, if we move it clockwise, it will move the tracer point out, and if we move it counterclockwise, it will move it in. So, as we can see, we need to come out more. We're going to go clockwise with it. Until it touches the key. And we want to make sure that the tracer point remains up and down. Once you loosen the grub nut, it will move side to side. So we have it up and down. We're going to lock it back into place. And now we can test the calibration of the tracer point along with the cutter tool by easily moving side to side. And the cutter should barely be scraping along the key, just slightly. And that is how you adjust the calibration of the tracer point. Now we're going to check the carriage stop to make sure that there are 0.2 millimeters of space between the tracer and the jaws when the carriage is brought forward. So the carriage stop is this bolt here that is sticking out, and will actually stop the carriage from hitting the tracer, so when moved back and forth, it doesn't scrape against the jaws here. So, business card is a good frame of reference for 0.2 millimeters that we can slide down between. Now it should be close enough that it will hold the business card in place, but enough space that will allow the business card to slide back and forth. If it is too loose or too tight to allow the business card through, then it will need to be adjusted. In order to adjust it, you would loosen the nut here at the back of the bolt, allowing you to then turn the bolt clockwise to bring the bolt forward, or counterclockwise to retract the bolt back, and then tighten the nut down, and then retest the space between the tracer and the jaws. And that is how you check the carriage stop. In this video, we're going to show you how to adjust tension or replace the motor belt. The tools that you will need are your 2.5mm Allen key, as well as a socket wrench with a 10mm socket. I've already unplugged the machine to make sure that there's no power going to it. To do the adjustment or replacement of the belt, you do have to flip the machine over onto its back. So I have also already removed the chip tray because we don't want those spilling out into the machine as well as all over our work area. First step, we're going to remove the safety cover to expose the motor belt. We're going to use our 2.5mm Allen key to remove the 3 Allen bolts off to the side. And then just take off that cover and set it off to the side for now. Now we can get to our belt, but it has too much tension on it for us to simply pull it off and put a new belt on. At this point, we're going to completely flip the machine over onto its backside. And we're going to get to these bolts here to loosen, which will allow us to move the motor and increase or decrease tension on the belt. There's a 4th bolt under that metal plate that we need to move. So we will use our 2.5mm Allen key and remove 3 Allen bolts. That will allow us to lift this metal cover up and out of the way. Alright, now we can set our 2.5mm Allen key off to the side, and that metal plate will just lift up, and we can also set it off to the side. And this now exposes the wiring that we can move out of the way and get to that 4th bolt. Now we're going to use our socket wrench, and we're going to loosen but not remove the 4 bolts. We'll make them pretty loose so that the motor will move freely. Now that the 4 bolts are loosened, we can put tension on the belt and remove tension from the belt by pushing forward on the motor and pulling back on the base. We can then easily remove the motor belt and replace it with a new one. And to replace it with a new one, you want to slide it over the deburring brush under that post there. Make sure you get it in the track that's on the post of the deburring brush, and then slide it back on to the rear inside the track. To put tension on it, we're going to push forward on the base and pull back on the motor, and you can see it tighten up. Now the tricky part is to hold the motor in place while you tighten the bolts back down. If you have a second set of hands, use them. And then we're just going to go back through, tighten our 4 bolts back up. And once you get 2 of them tightened down, you'll be able to let go of the motor. Freeing up your second hand makes it a lot easier to tighten those last couple down. Now, since these are holding the motor in place and it will be incurring a lot of vibration, you do want to make them very tight. Alright, with those 4 tightened back down, check the tension on the belt. It should kind of flick like a guitar string. And now we can replace our metal cover to protect the wiring from being exposed. Use 3 Allen bolts, place back to secure the metal cover. And then use your 2.5mm Allen key to tighten those back down. And now we can flip the entire machine back over. And reattach our safety cover. Follow back up with the 2.5mm Allen key, tighten them up. This is a plastic cover, so we don't want to make them too tight and crack the plastic. And that is how you replace or adjust the tension on the motor belt on the Speed 44. The tools that you will need to replace the cutting tool are your wrench that came with the machine, your locking rod, and a 2.5mm Allen key. In this video we're going to show you how to replace the cutting tool once it has become dull or worn and is no longer useful. First step, always make sure that your machine is unplugged. Second step, we're going to take off the safety shield using our 2.5mm Allen key. We've got 4 bolts on the top of here that need to be removed. That will then expose the cutting tool. Now each of these has a small little washer that we need to make sure stays with it, and set them off to the side. And underneath each one, between the safety shield and the machine itself, are 4 little rubber grommets that we also need to be careful when removing the safety shield. Don't get lost, and also don't fall down into the pit of metal shavings since they are lightly greased. Alright, with all 4 of those, our safety shield is loose, and we can now gently lift up, set it off to the side, and then take our 4 rubber grommets and set them off to the side. Now we have our cutting tool exposed. We're going to use our locking rod, and we're going to slide that guy in until we get into a locking position. Now this is a left threaded bolt, so we do need to go the opposite direction with it. So put the locking rod in so that the back of the rod touches the base of the machine, locking it in place, and then we can pull towards us to loosen that bolt. Done with the wrench and the locking nut for now. Now we can loosen the nut the rest of the way. Take it, set it off to the side. Metal washer here, we're going to slide that off and set it off to the side, and carefully remove the cutting tool, which can then be replaced with a new cutting tool. As you can see, there is a slight angle to the blade, and that angled edge needs to be facing the deburring brush. And this needs to sit all the way flat against that bigger cylinder there, so it needs to go over that piece. And then our washer is going to go back, and you can see that there is a sort of cutout inside part and a flat edge there. We need that cutout part to fit over there. And we'll slide it on, and so it's flat there. And then we can reapply our locking nut. And again, this is a left threaded bolt. Alright, we've got it finger tightened. We're going to use our locking knob. Now this time we need it to go the opposite direction to lock in place there, so that we can push that way with the wrench. So we're going to push away, and with the force that holds the locking knob in place, and we want this to be very tight so that it doesn't come loose from the vibration and the motions of the motor. We can now set those off to the side, and then we need to reapply our safety shield. So we're going to take our 4 rubber grommets and sit them back over their threaded holes. And then we're carefully going to take the safety shield and place it on top of those grommets over their respective threaded holes. Now I'm going to hold that in place while I grab one of the Allen bolts and begin to just kind of finger tighten it a little bit, get it threaded to hold the shield in place while we put the other ones in. And it might take a little bit to get it started, get it lined up with that rubber washer underneath. once we have all 4 of those finger tightened, then we can use our 2.5mm Allen key and go back and tighten those up. Now we just want them to be snug. We don't really want to make them too tight, nothing like what we did with the bolt on the cutter tool, because we don't want to crack the plastic. As you can see, is easily cracked. And that is how you replace the cutter tool. In this video, we're going to show you how to swap out the deburring brush on the Speed 44. As before starting any type of maintenance on a machine, always make sure that it is unplugged so there is no electricity flowing through the machine. The tools that you will need to swap out the deburring brush are your 2.5mm Allen key, a 4mm Allen key, and your locking rod to hold the whole unit in place. First thing we're going to do is remove the safety cover using our 2.5mm Allen key to remove the 3 bolts on the left hand side. And just set them out of the way. Now, the safety cover easily pops off, and we can move the whole thing off to the side for now. Now the deburring brush is exposed. We're going to use our locking rod. Make sure the clamp carriage is out of the way, and slide it through to lock the unit in place. Now we'll use our 4mm Allen key to remove the bolt and washer that are holding the deburring brush in place. That can be set off to the side, and then your deburring brush easily pops off. Then once you replace it with a new deburring brush, there's no specific orientation on the deburring brush, there's no grooves like with the cutter, so you can just pop that back on. Use your bolt and washer and screw those back in place. Now since this is going to be moving when the machine motor's turned on, you want to make sure it's locked down pretty tight. So we're going to use the locking rod and lock the unit back in place. And then use the 4mm Allen key and tighten it back down. Remove the locking rod. And the brush is now swapped out. We just need to reattach the safety cover. And then this cover is made out of plastic, so we don't want to tighten it down too much and crack the plastic. We just want to make sure it's nice and snug. And that is how you change out the deburring brush on the Speed 44. Now we're going to show you how to check the fuses and if need be replace them. So after we've unplugged the machine, you can pull out the little door underneath and flip down the lid that houses the fuses. If you need to, you can use the edge of a flathead screwdriver to get underneath and pop them up. And then you can do a visual inspection to see if they are visibly blown, or you can use a continuity tester to check and see if current is or is not flowing through the fuse. If current won't flow, then they need to be replaced, and you can use your replacement fuses that came with the machine and simply pop them in and lift up the hood and then push it back in. And that's how you change the fuses. In this video we're going to be cutting a 66 or KW1 house key, and for that we will be using the A clamp or the A jaw. You can see how you can swap the jaws back and forth. We will be using the A jaw for both of these. And to fit the key in, you're going to just sit it in there with the shoulder evening up. You can see a little ledge there will match up to the ledge on the clamp, and tighten it down. Now the point between the tracer and the cutting tool is fixed, so we need to make sure that it is the same distance here. We're going to use the shoulder gauge to do that, and I'm going to loosen this one up a little bit and just sit it just a little bit closer to the shoulder gauge. So now the key is sitting snugly on both sides of the shoulder gauge. We know that these are now the same distance apart as these. Now for the actual cutting itself, you're going to push down on the handle here, push in the red button, move the carriage forward, and you're going to get the tracer right down in that first kind of shoulder right there, right before the first cut. Then you're going to just do one smooth motion across. So we're going to go up, we're going to get into that slot, we're going to do one fluid motion across, and then back down. So I'm going to turn the motor on, and again we're going to go up, right into that cut, and one fluid motion across. And back down. Turn the motor off. Always make sure you turn the motor off before you remove the key. Now there's going to be a couple of little metal shavings that we're going to use the deburring brush for. So always turn the motor off, remove the key, turn the motor back on, and then at a downward angle, use the deburring brush to get any of those metal shavings off the key. Turn off the motor, and we now have a perfect duplicate 66 key. Now we're going to duplicate a double-sided automotive key. These kind of keys are typical for Jeep, GM, and Chrysler branded vehicles. So we're going to use our key, and we're also going to need our steel tip bars that we are going to orient with that small tip facing down and out, and that is going to go in the furthest slot. Since these keys don't have a shoulder to them, we cannot use the shoulder guide, which is why we need to use the steel stop bars. And that will make sure that we have each key, both the original and the blank, at the same distance of each other. So we're going to slide the key in, and we're going to do this on the C clamp. The C clamp is going to be typical for most edge cut double-sided automotive keys such as these. And we're going to slide it in all the way until the tip of the key rests against the steel stop bar. And you'll feel it with that little notch there. You'll feel it slide into place, and you're going to clamp it down once you feel it in that notch. And same thing with the blank. Just push it all the way to the tip, it's touching the steel stop bar, and you feel the key in the notch, and clamp it down. Now we're going to remove the steel tips and set them off to the side. Now since these are double-sided, double edge cut keys, we will need to do one pass through, one clean sweep as before, turn the motor off, flip this key. It's the same cut on both sides, so we don't need to flip the original because it'll have the same cut, but we do need to flip the key that we are cutting. So we'll flip it, and then we'll turn the motor back on, do another pass through, cut it, turn the motor off, take the key out, turn the motor back on, and use the deburring brush on both sides of the key. Alright, so motor on, And we're going to go up and do one fluid motion. You want to start with the tracer just a little bit before the first cut. Lock it back, motor off, flip the key, need our steel stop bar, make sure that we have it in the same space in, so the tip is touching the steel stop bar, line it up with that groove in there, remove the steel tip, set it off to the side, motor back on, and another pass through cutting the second side of the key. Motor off, remove the key, it's now cut on both sides, and now we just need to use the deburring brush to get any metal shavings off. Motor on, and point the key at a downward angle. Motor off, and now we have a nice clean duplicate of the original.